record and this here. Let's get everything set up now. Okay. I'm going to do something a little different tonight. I mentioned that I was going to do two things. The first one was going to be a few tidbits on the end of this last bracha, and then a class dealing with the topic of Yerushalayim. I decided to ditch the continuing the few tidbits on Alat Tzadikim because I looked them over, and honestly, they weren't such interesting things. So I don't want to bore you. If I get bored by them, you're going to be bored of it. So that's my. I don't get up and bore people. I don't know if I told you. I once got up in front of Shul years and years ago in Chicago, right before Musaf, which is what I spoke, and I said, "Listen, I just looked over what I have to say, and it's boring. Let's just daven Musaf." And man, I thought they were going to throw me a kiddush and make me the Chatan Torah and Chatan Bereshit that year just for that alone. Anyways, what I want to do, I'm going to look at and translate briefly the next two brachot, ask a couple questions, and then we're going to segue into the whole topic of Yerushalayim before we get back to this bracha. Kind of an introduction to this bracha, I think, will be important. And as I mentioned also in the message, I had given this shiur a few years ago on Tisha B'Av. So I'm sure you all who were there would have remembered it, and it's going to be a review for you. I'm sure you remember every single word. But that's life. It's okay. So let's take a look, and I'm going to ask a few questions. I'm not going to answer any of them tonight, but just to be aware of what's coming up here. The next two brachot, and you'll see why I'm doing both. It says as follows: this is Nusach Ashkenaz. Obviously, I've been saying that all along. We're doing only Nusach Ashkenaz, but Adot Mizrach is different. It starts off Tishkom B'toch Yerushalayim, but the general idea of the bracha is the same. Tashuv. And to Jerusalem, your city, with mercy you should return. And you should dwell in it as you have said. Where did he say it? Oh, by the way, why is it? We talked about this. Why? And to Jerusalem. Uvneota bekarov b'yameinu. You should build it speedily in our days. Just say uvneota bekarov. Binyan olam, an everlasting structure. The Chisei David Meira Tochach Tachin, and also you should establish the king or the throne of David quickly. Baruch Ata Hashem Bonei Yerushalayim. Blessed are you, Hashem, the one who builds, present tense, Jerusalem. Next bracha. Et Tzemach David Avdacha Meira Tatzmiach. This the offshoot of David, which is a term which means Mashiach. Meira Tatzmiach. You should plant the seed immediately or quickly. And his horn you should be raised with your salvation. Because we are looking for and anticipating your Yeshua, your salvation every day. Or kol hayom does not mean every day. It means all the day. So just some observations. If you never noticed it, and again, when you daven, just kind of on autopilot, you may not, that this bracha, Yerushalayim Tashuv, mentions two things: Yerushalayim and Mashiach. Kisei David, Melech HaMashiach. The next bracha mentions also David HaMelech. It mentions the offshoot, meaning the descendant of David. Again, Mashiach. But there's no mention of Yerushalayim. So why mention David HaMelech in two brachot, meaning the Mashiach? And if it's necessary, why not mention Yerushalayim in the second bracha also? Why start a bracha with the vav? V'li Yerushalayim. By the way, I mentioned this before. It's not v'le Yerushalayim. It's v'li Yerushalayim. Be very careful on how you say that word. Why return in Rachamim? Why build it bekarov b'yameinu? Just say build it bekarov, build it soon. And there are many, many questions here. And I'm not going to answer any of them now. So I'm going to leave you in suspense. That's what we'll deal with over the next 2 to 3 weeks, probably, Bezrat Hashem. Actually, 2 or 3 weeks. And what I do want to do is I want to segue into this shiur that I want to give to you. Let me just, what this happened here, just a second. Okay. And get something here on the screen. Tof. Okay. Just got to bear with me for a second. I wasn't prepared with one thing. Just want to get this set. Okay, still recording. Good. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, give a class on the two things: the primacy, the importance of the city of Yerushalayim, and also the fact that we continue to mourn for Yerushalayim, meaning not the city itself, but the lack of Beit HaMikdash and whatever else we'll see what we're mourning for. We also know that the majority of the world's Jews, especially in Israel, I can't say the whole world, but in Israel for sure, a very large percentage of Jews sit, even if they're unaffiliated and not observant yet, sit down and a Pesach Seder. They also, most of them, but not all, observe Yom Kippur. Both of those end with the dramatic ending of the Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim Habnuya, next year in the rebuilt city of Jerusalem. And Yom Kippur, we end with a Tekiyat Shofar. And then again, the Pesach Seder ends like Yom Kippur with the Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim. We also know that when a Chatan and Kala are standing under the chuppah, it is incumbent upon the rabbi always to remind everybody that even though they're at the height of their joy in life, you still have to remember that there's something missing, of course, which is that we don't have the Beit HaMikdash Yerushalayim, and they say the famous words from Tilim, Imeshkachech Yerushalayim Tishkach Yimini, if I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its cunning. Shuls around the world face, for the most part, but not all, face Yerushalayim. Why? Why is there such an emphasis on Yerushalayim? Yes, we know, of course, that Hashem talked about the Makom Sheyicha Hashem Elokecha, the place that your God will choose. The name Yerushalayim doesn't appear in the Torah. It appears later in Navi, in Tanakh, but in Nach, but it doesn't appear in Torah. It's always the place that God will show. It's Har HaMoriah. It has many, many, many names. Actually, the city of Yerushalayim has 70 names. And we talked about a few weeks ago about Tzion, why it's called that. But the question really is, we just take it automatically that Yerushalayim is so important. It is. And not only that, we also politically, we talk about nowadays that most countries do not place their embassy in the city of Yerushalayim, mostly because they don't understand a lot about what goes on in the real world. But why? Now, we do know also that many people think that if you look in the non-Jewish world, the history of Yerushalayim starts pretty much with King David. That David HaMelech captures the city of Yerushalayim. He actually captures what we see today as Ir David, that area. And when you look up from Ir David, and you're facing and looking up towards the old city with the wall around it that was built about 500 years ago by Suleiman the Magnificent, that was the city called Yevus, like Yevusim we talk about in davening. So that was the city of the Jebusites, of Yevus. And that's when pretty much historically the world looks at the beginning of the history of Yerushalayim or Jerusalem. Truth of the matter is that by us, the history of Jerusalem or Yerushalayim starts much earlier. Number one, Adam HaRishon is created there. It was the city of Malkitzedek, which we see in Bereshit. It's where Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov davened to Hashem. It is the city, as I say, that Hashem chose to have his Shekhinah eventually rest it's not the right word, but to emanate from. It is also, as we talked about multiple times in this class, the place from which all of our tefillot gather from around the world and shoot up, so to speak, into the Shamayim. What gives Yerushalayim its special uniqueness? What is that? What is there? What gives it its holiness? What gives it its origin? And why can't we build a Beit HaMikdash? I mean, I know that they're lahavdil, alef alfi avdalos, that in the World Zionist Congress, when there was the Uganda plan, in quotes, that was presented that Jews can have a homeland. It doesn't have to be Israel. It could be what was mistakenly called Uganda, which it wasn't. And they can have a homeland in Africa somewhere. Why can't we just build Beit HaMikdash? Because it'd be so difficult to do that at Har HaBayit now for multiple reasons, mostly political. Build it in Beersheba. Build it in Dimona. Build it in Ma'ale Adumim, for goodness sake. I'd be great for us. We have a short walk to the Beit HaMikdash. Why Dafka there? And why is Beit HaMikdash so important? Think about that for a second. We have not had Beit HaMikdash for a couple thousand years almost. It was destroyed in 70. We're in 2025. We are less than 50 years away, and it will be rebuilt before that, but we are less than 50 years away from 2,000 full years of Beit HaMikdash. Judaism, except for some very dark periods of our history, which some of we've gone through in our history class, some of which we will go through, but all which we all know, Judaism has shockingly, amazingly, not only survived, it's thrived in many cases. There's more Torah being learned today now than more than the time that we stood at Har Sinai. So what really are we lacking? We daven for the Beit HaMikdash, I want Beit HaMikdash. What? And this is a rhetorical question. Obviously, there's many reasons we want it. But I'm just trying to have you just step back for a second from our axiomatic statements that we always say this, that we want Beit HaMikdash. We want our eyes to witness the return of Hashem to Zion, to Yerushalayim. All these things. So why do we feel that we're missing something if we seem to be doing okay without it? And I'll even go a step further. As opposed to the city and the country that, especially the city of Yerushalayim, that Mark Twain referred to as this desolate wasteland, and other words he used, look around it today. Look at Yerushalayim, the beauty, the population, the Torah, the yeshivot. There seems to be more kedusha now without Beit HaMikdash than maybe any time since, again, the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. It's got Jewish life everywhere. We see the words of Sefer Zechariah coming to life before our eyes, that the elders and the children will be playing in sitting in the streets of Jerusalem. It's all there. So why do we mourn its destruction? Why? Now, what does it mean we mourn destruction? Yes, I gave this on Tisha B'Av, but this is for any time of year because it intertwines with the bracha of the Yerushalayim Berachamim Tashuv, because the idea of saying that bracha is not just, oh, we want Beit HaMikdash. It's also, we've been mourning the loss of a lack of Beit HaMikdash for centuries, almost 2,000 years. Enough already. Now we need the Beit HaMikdash. We need to have Mashiach. We need to have things go the normal way. We're living in an abnormal world for 2,000 years, the way Hashem planned it. So the bracha, one of the questions I asked when we looked at the bracha of the Yerushalayim Berachamim Tashuv is the bracha itself. I said it's a problem. He said, Baruch Atah Hashem Bonei Yerushalayim. That he is the one who is building, present tense, Yerushalayim. Other than the fact that we have, the old joke that they say that the national bird of Israel is the crane, because all the cranes you see, the building all over the place. Why is this bracha said in present tense? Hashem isn't building Yerushalayim. Even you want to say, oh, look at now, it's being built up. Go back 1,000 years, they were saying this bracha this way. Why? Why in present tense? So the Gemara in Yerushalmi tells us as follows. Kol dor she'eino nivneh biyamav, any generation in which the Beit HaMikdash is not built, ki'ilu hu checherivo, it's like that generation destroyed it. What does that mean? That's a pretty big weight to put on our shoulders when you think about it. So let's take a look at it. Let's talk a little bit of an explanation. What does that really mean? That any generation in which it's not rebuilt, and we still have a chance, and it will be rebuilt in our time, because we're literally sitting at the doorway. We're sitting there watching history unfold. And as much as many of us, I know that I've spoken to many of you online, offline, person, very upset about many things right now, whether it's the deal, it's the hostages, it's just so many things about our government, just one thing after another. As we mentioned on our class in the Emunah and Bitachon, we know that Hashem has a plan. We don't know it. We don't understand it. And from the inside, it sure looks pretty lousy right now. We have to be patient. So when we mourn for a building that existed 2,000 years ago, was destroyed about 2,000 years ago, we're not mourning for that. That's not what we're mourning for. And again, focus This class has to do directly with the bracha of Yerushalayim Yacha, which we'll pick up, of course, next week. If we look back at the moment of destruction, there is a midrash that says as follows. I'm going to read you in English. When the high priest saw that the holy Beit HaMikdash was in flames, he climbed up to the roof of the sanctuary together with the groups of young priests. They held the keys to the Beit HaMikdash in their hands and spoke before Hashem and said, Master of the universe, it appears that we were not worthy of being trusted officers for you. Take back the keys to your house. And with that, they threw the keys upwards. The image of a hand appeared in the heavens and took the keys. And when the priests and Levites saw that the holy Beit HaMikdash was indeed being consumed by flames, they held their lyres and trumpets and plunged into the fire. We have to understand that we have a job. We have a mission. It's probably even a better word in our lifetime to see to it that the Beit HaMikdash is being rebuilt. When we don't, the failure is really less to do with politics than with many other things, which we'll see soon. That's our failure. Everyone can say, "Oh, it's a government's failure. They could build it. They could tell the world to go to whatever, just jump off a cliff, and we're just going to build it." And we all know, that'd be World War III. What has to change? What has to change is when there are enough Jews who will make a strong commitment in life. I'm talking about the Orthodox. I'm talking about the non-Orthodox, the Chilonim, the Masortim, everybody who will make a significant change in their life, enough that Hashem will say, so to speak, Dayenu, Higi Azman, the time has come. When will Mashiach come? When is that going to happen? So we know. It says, Hashem says, when you will listen to me. Now, if you took a sampling of the world's Jewry right now, and not a sampling, but an actual ability to ask every single Jew, and you should take a statistical analysis of the percentage of Torah mitzvot, the amount of people keeping Torah mitzvot today obviously is much greater than quite for many, many years. That's nice. Even those people who keep Torah mitzvot, we all have what we can improve on. There's no question. Those people who don't keep Torah mitzvot, we also know that they have to get their act together. And we see this in Sefer Zechariah as one of my favorite. I don't remember where I saw this original thought, but it's one of my favorite comments on Sefer Zechariah and having to do with Mashiach and what we need to do. People say, "Oh, let's have Mashiach. We want Mashiach now." Great. What do we do about it? Sefer Zechariah says as follows, and I have definitely mentioned this before in different classes. It was in the 4th year of the reign of Darius. The word came down from God to Zechariah on the 4th of the month of the 4th day of the month of Kislev. וישלח אל בית אל שר האוצר ורגem melech ואנשיו לכלות את פני השם. They sent a contingent to Yerushalayim. לאמור אל הכהנים אשר לבית השם צבקות ואל הנביאים לאמור. To ask the following question. Now, keep in mind, Zechariah, after Ezra and Nehemiah did the time period was called Shivat Zion, which we learned about in our Navi class over the last few years ago. They rebuilt the Beit HaMikdash, the second Beit HaMikdash. And they come to Zechariah, prophet of the time, and they ask a very simple question. Ha'evkeh b'chodesh ha'chamishi, should we still mourn or cry in the 5th month? Kasher asiti ze kama shanim, that we've been doing for all these years. For 70 years, the Jews cried on the 9th of Av. They cried on Tisha B'Av, and they mourned and they fasted because of the destruction of Beit HaMikdash. But now, they have a Beit HaMikdash. So the question is, do we have to fast? What's the fast for? Zechariah gives them an answer in a very harsh way. He says, you're asking the wrong question. You're worried of whether you should be saying keynote this year. You're worried if you should be sitting on the floor, if you should be um, fasting. That's what you're worried about. I'll tell you what you should be worried about. You should be worried about how you're going to keep the Beit Hamikdash from being destroyed. And he gives a laundry list of things that have to be done, how we treat each other, and how we do mitzvot, and how we take care of the ger and yatom and almanah, all these different things. He says in tzedek and mishpat, we have to act properly and justly. In other words, do what Hashem wants us to do. And only then are you going to have Beit HaMikdash. Don't be so worried about are we going to fast or not fast on the 9th of Av. What we have to be concerned with is how do we see to it that we keep what we have? And for us, it's even stronger question. Not how do we keep what we have, how do we get what we don't have? And what is it we're supposed to do? The same formula Zechariah tells Bnei Yisrael in his days. Yerushalayim is the absolute beating heart of the Jewish life, of the universe. It is the spot where Hashem says he will have the strongest emanation of his Shekhinah, his divine presence, and from where the ultimate redemption will come and Mashiach will reign. Even though modern Yerushalayim is a rebuilt, beautiful city, we still have an obligation to mourn for it. And even though you may think we mourn for it one day a year, we do, in a sense, every single weekday. When we say the Bracha B'Yerushalayim Rachamim Tashu, when we say V'Techazena Einei B'Shuvcha L'Tzion B'Rachamim, those statements are the constant reminder that we're lacking something. And that is a mini form of mourning every single day that we don't have Beit HaMikdash. It's not the intensity of the 3 weeks or the 9 days or Tisha B'Av, but it's a little reminder every single day. And when we say Birkat Hamazon, when we bench, we also have that reminder that in Birkat Hamazon. Even though Yerushalayim is rebuilt today, it's beautiful, beautiful city. By the way, I found the 1 2-meter stretch in all of Jerusalem that's not under construction. It was unbelievable. You blink and you go right by it. I think they're going to put a sign there that's going to memorialize that forever, that 2-meter stretch. And then they'll probably tear it down so they can build something there too. When we speak about Yerushalayim in our davening, when we say V'Yerushalayim Mircha B'Rachamim Tashu, for example, we're speaking about the Beit HaMikdash and the avodah, the service that was done in Beit HaMikdash, the intensity of Hashem's presence, the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh Kodashim, Hashem's anticipated reign over Yerushalayim, and of course, over the entire world. Have you ever stopped to think what we don't have because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash? For those of us fortunate enough to live here in Israel, and for people who live outside Israel in the Sephardi communities, we have the absolute fortune of hearing Birkat Kohanim every morning, and sometimes twice, depending if it's a day of Musaf, where the Kohanim get up and give a bracha to the tzibur, to the shul. It is a pale reference to what was actually done in the Beit HaMikdash, where there was full prostration on the ground when they were giving the bracha, where the hands would be held above their heads, where the Kohen Gadol would stand with his hands a little below his forehead, because the tzitz, which had God's name on his forehead. That's one thing, one indication. But if we go back to the very beginning of this class, not today's, I'm talking about the whole series, which started exactly a year ago, by the way. The question is, how did Tefillah come about? We talked about that, and why 3 times a day. And we talked about the idea that one of the reasons is relating to the korbanot, or the sacrifices that were brought to Beit HaMikdash, the sacrifices of the morning, sacrifice of the afternoon, and the evarim and pdarim, the leftover parts that were still burning overnight, which represented Ma'ariv. So there have been probably millions of korbanot that we have not brought. There's not been the nisuch hamayim, the special water. I guess the word in English is libation. It just sounds like a weird word to me. The water libation on Sukkot, and the blowing of the shofar on Shabbat in Beit HaMikdash, and on and on and on. And especially the height of everything was the avodah, the service of Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. I tell you honestly, that's the one thing I can't wait. I can't wait to see that. Is it going to still be done? What's going to happen? I don't know, but I want to see that because it's magnificent when you just read the words. When you learn Masechet Yomar, just the Mishnayot, or you read the words of the Avodah in Musaf and Yom Kippur, you really get a sense of what was going on in the Beit Hamikdash and outside the Beit Hamikdash on that day. We've lost it. The Ish Et, the man who was supposed to take the goat out to the wilderness. We've lost the Kohen Gadol. We haven't had that, in spite of the fact that the Kohen Gadol was a very corrupt office the last many years of the second Beit Hamikdash. But so what? Play devil's advocate. So what? Why do we need the Beit Hamikdash? What do we really need it for? As I started off before, I said, we're doing fine, right? Now you have a lot of people, this is a class I gave also once before, who don't live in Israel and refuse to come on Aliyah, say, no, not until Hashem makes it known that he wants us here when we have a Beit HaMikdash, which is a misguided response, of course. We know that. But that's for a different day. But there's still an important understanding. There are those who say we still live in Galut, in exile, because we don't have Beit HaMikdash. I don't hold that opinion, but that's an opinion. But what do we need it for? To what degree do Jews today, when they say V'li Yerushalayim, they say V'techazena, when they commemorate the 3 weeks and have the 9 days, and Tisha B'Av, to what degree do we really feel it? To what degree do we feel something lacking in our lives? Our lives are rich. Spiritually, physically, we're content. Not everybody. I understand that. We don't live in utopia. But when you take into consideration in big averages here, average people, average families and homes, businesses, there's prosperity, there's a lot of good stuff. That the destruction of Beit HaMikdash 2,000 years ago is limited concern. There is a tefillah that some people do say. I've only met one or two who actually do this. I know there are plenty, but one or two actually do it. It's called Tikkun Chatzot. What is Tikkun Chatzot? Where people get up at midnight halachic midnight, which is 12 hours after the midday point, and they put ashes on their forehead, and they sit by their front door next to the mezuzah, and they say certain things that are about Yerushalayim and the fact that we don't have, and literally, except for Chagim and Shabbat, mourn the lack of Beit HaMikdash every night. That's a level I am definitely not at. I know me. I would just sit there next to the doorway and fall asleep next to the door. That's not really mourning. That's just called sleeping. But tachlis, you may feel it sometimes. Put away the 3 weeks. Put that aside. Maybe when you go to Yerushalayim and you come around the curve and you first are looking over the area of Har HaBayit, or you stand by the Kotel, or you do a Kotel tunnel tour, or you take a little walk and a tiyul in Yerushalayim, or you go to Har HaZeitim, or you go to you may feel that, oh, wow, this is really so sad. I'm looking up there and we don't have Beit HaMikdash. There have been over the years many occasions I've had with families to take them on an unofficial tour of the Southern Wall excavation. It's one of the areas I truly love to talk about, which is the Southern Wall next to the Western Wall. And before I do the actual tour, I have people look out and tell me, looking towards the Kotel, what we call the Kotel, and then the return wall, which is the Southern Wall, and I ask them, what do you see? I see stones, I see people, I see trees, and I say, I see a Beit HaMikdash. I see people, streaming to Yerushalayim by the thousands on Chagim. I see people bringing korbanot if we're going to bring them during in Yemot HaMashiach. That's a debate. No, we have to have a vision. We have to see and feel. So sometimes a person may actually feel that. I brought years ago. I would bring groups to Israel during the Intifada, especially. It started with just men. Then we branched out to family groups when things calmed down. And I was with one group, one of my first groups, and I always had in my closet what I called Kriya shirts. That every time I went to Israel, I would take a shirt with me. So the first time I go to the Kotel, I tear Kriya. I don't hold that anymore, by the way. Not I mean for myself. I mean when people come to Yerushalayim, I'm not a fan anymore of person turning Korea, but there's definitely reasons why some people will. In any case, so we sat on the rooftop. It got a little VIP treatment for whatever reason. And as a group of about 7, 8 guys, and we went on the rooftop of this one house in the old city, and we looked down on the kotel from fairly close. And one of the guys who had not been in Israel for many years, he tore Kriya and he burst into tears. He got down on he was lying on the ground crying. No, that's not how we act every single day. We can't exist like that. It's not, I don't want to say it's not normal. It's not for ability to carry on with life. But it hit him so strongly, the lack of Beit HaMikdash. But let's come back to this now. The truth is, not only do people not really feel the real lack of the Beit HaMikdash, even more so, there are a few people who feel something I didn't even mention very much, which is the absence of the Shekhinah. Remember, I said the idea that one of the things of the Beit HaMikdash was the intensity of Hashem's divine presence in the Beit HaMikdash. It was obvious because of all the miracles that were taking place in the Beit HaMikdash. I'm not going to get into all of them right now. See Pirkei Avot. For many people, it'd obviously be very hard to even imagine what would have felt like to be in the Beit HaMikdash and what it will feel like to be in a rebuilt Beit HaMikdash, Bezrat Hashem. But the Torah always reminds us, Lo b'shamayim. The Torah is not in the heavens, so it has to be something, as the Torah says, Ki karov elecha davar me'od beficha u'vivavcha la'asoto. That's the opening. That's the pasuk for which the whole Sefer Tanya is based on. That it's the idea that we can easily acquire what's in the Torah. We can do it. We can absolutely do what needs to be done. Our goal is not to ascend spiritually into the heavens and find spirituality there and to sit on some mountaintop and contemplate, for 6 months at a time and detach from a community, although I've thought about that a couple of times. But it's right here on earth. Here is where we have to find this spirituality, the connection to the Shekhinah. And the challenge is to us to remember, we have this idea of the Taken Olam Machut Shakai. We have to, and I don't want to use the term Tikkun Olam, but we have to do something, bring reparation into this world. And then Hashem says, when we do that, says that you listen to me, you do my mitzvot, I'm your Hashem, I'm sorry to use, I'm your man, so to speak, or woman, here in this world. And the Beit HaMikdash made this challenge a little bit easier to grasp. Because again, imagine the person is standing outside the Beit HaMikdash 2,000 years ago. And they observe what's going on. They see the smoke from the flame that was always going. And they hear the Birkat Kohanim. And they see what happens when hundreds of thousands of people come to Yerushalayim on Chagim and ascend the Temple Mount and all. You could feel that spirituality. You can feel that. But our spiritual fulfillment, our ability to connect in this world means, in that world, meant that in the Beit HaMikdash, you could feel the presence of the Shekhinah. And again, like I said, the Beit HaMikdash itself was the testimony of the presence of Shekhinah because of all the miracles that took place there. But we have aspirations, we have dreams, we have hopes that after the Churban, as we went into exile, what happened? We were alienated from the source of spirituality. Now, that's a very big statement. What does that mean, tachlis? Imagine a person is 40 years old, living at the time of the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash. And they see the Beit HaMikdash being destroyed, and they're taken into galut, into exile. They had the opportunity to witness, to hear, to feel, to breathe what the ultimate picture of what Yerushalayim and serving God was to be. And then the distance from it. It was so devastating spiritually that, to come back to the very beginning of our history class, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai felt that Judaism could falter and God forbid, fall apart and lose itself and into oblivion, which is when he, of course, established Yavne in place of Yerushalayim temporarily. But the Shekhinah seems after that, therefore, even more remote, even more distant. Today, unfortunately, many people believe that to feel a sense of spirituality, you have to study Zohar, nothing wrong with it. Study Kabbalah, the writings of the Arizal, which is an important aspect. But they kind of, that's like saying, okay, I'm going to study quantum mechanics, but I don't really know what 2 times 2 is. But that's okay. I'm going to still study quantum mechanics. They feel that they're going to be able to get the spiritual high from Zohar and Kabbalah and all, but it's not going to work like that. It doesn't work like that. They believe that they're incapable um, of, if they want to be capable of achieving that. It's not going to happen. It's not the Jewish approach. How do you achieve spirituality? How do you grow spiritually and therefore grow into Torah mitzvot and therefore hopefully help bring the coming of Mashiach and the Beit HaMikdash and the return of the Shekhinah and all we've been talking about? And the Yerushalayim Yercha B'Rachamim Tashuv Bracha will change radically. Simple. Quote, simple. But the Torah says it's simple, which is when you prepare a kosher meal, when you're careful about washing and saying Birkat HaMazon and treating your fellow man with respect, and you cite your brachot properly, you discuss Torah at your meals, and you take your shulchan, your tables we've talked about in this class, and change it into and in the Pirkei Avot, and make it truly a table where Hashem is served, not food, but Torah. You start to feel more the presence of Hashem. I'm going to read a sentence I have written down here in my notes that's in red and in big letters. I'm just going to read it to you. This feeling of alienation and distance is the inner meaning of the Churban, or the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. We need to understand that the most significant part of Yerushalayim is missing, and it is up to us to change that and make that a reality. What should be the essence of our lives? What should be really our focus and our goals? We want to live in the presence of Hashem. Now, that's something that we talk about a lot in our davening. We talk about it in our learning. But what does it really mean? We had last week, when we did the prior bracha, it ended Mishan u'miftach latzadikim. We talked about bitachon, but we also talked about the fact that Hashem is upon whom one rests and upon one whom has the trust. We trust in Hashem, we lean on Hashem. But how many people pay lip service to that? And how many people truly inculcate that into their lives and they really believe it? That is a piece of a puzzle. Again, what's this whole topic about tonight? Yerushalayim, Beit HaMikdash, and what we're lacking without it, what we want when we have it. How do we get there? But when we truly feel Hashem is part of our lives, and He is with us and present in our lives, it can bring us joy, it can bring us satisfaction. But when we no longer feel Hashem's presence, when when they had the Beit HaMikdash, that was fine. That was then. This is Tafshin Pei. This is 2025. Please give me a break. When we feel that Hashem is displeased with us, when we feel things aren't right, everything goes black. And what's happening then? When we feel that hole in our lives, then we're experiencing the effects of the Churban. We're experiencing the effects of the lack or destruction of Beit HaMikdash. When we actually mourn on Tisha B'Av, which, by the way, this year we're all invited to a big barbecue on Tisha B'Av. This could be a day of extreme joy this year. But when we do mourn in the past on Tisha B'Av, what is it we're really mourning? We're not mourning the absence of a building. If you thought that a building is going to bring Mashiach, and a building is going to bring joy, and a building is going to bring the connection to God, you're sadly mistaken. The Churban is the absence of Hashem's intense presence. We have to feel that, not in Tammuz and Av, not when you're learning on a class, but every time we go through our day, at some point when we're davening, there has to be this pause. And the Chachamim built it into our Tefillah. They built it into our Birkat HaMazon. We talk about Yerushalayim, and we talk about Binyan Beit Hamikdash. We talk about Mashiach, and that's the challenge to all of us. That each one of us, has that ability to help bring the Mashiach and build Beit Hamikdash. We just said at the beginning, Gemara and Yerushalmi said that every generation in which the Beit Hamikdash is not built, it's as if that generation destroyed it. Why? It's not that they physically destroyed it. They blew the chance. They destroyed the chance to build it because they didn't do enough. And in this case, in our generation, we haven't done enough yet. So you can say, wait a minute, look around. Look around what's going on right now. The war and Shalom Neda, all these korbanot, and the hostages and all things are bleak and everything else. And again, I don't have any answers for that. And just to say it's part of Hashem's plan, which it is, we don't understand it. But when we make a conscious decision to do something, which means, let's say a person doesn't go over Parshat Shavua. Let's say a person, they're not careful in brachot, or they birkat hamazon only on Shabbat, or a man may not put on tefillin every single day, or whatever, the whole list of everything. And they make a decision not to change everything in their lives. Don't ever make such a decision, even Yom Kippur, to become super Jew the next day. Forget it. Doesn't it work that way? But if you do make a decision, like we talked about in Tefillah, we talked about in Birkat Hamazon, to every time try to add a little bit more, another line, another bracha with a little bit more intention. Or you make a decision that I'm going to really try to be careful making a bracha for everything I eat. I'm going to really be careful saying Birkat Hamazon. I'll be really careful, fill in the blank. Then what we're doing every time we do that in the metaphorical sense is adding another brick. We're adding another ability for the Beit HaMikdash to be rebuilt because Hashem told us. It's no secret. Hashem's given us the formula. He says we have to keep our Torah mitzvot. And Zechariah repeats this, keeping Torah mitzvot and very careful on Ben Adam L'Chavero, more so even than on Ben Adam L'Makom. What does that mean? That people, when they think about wanting to change, even the list I gave you before is all Ben Adam L'Makom, between us and Hashem, brachot and tefillah and Birkat Hamazon, all that. But we also have to be very, very extra careful in how we treat each other, how we talk about each other. I could speak from now until doomsday, as they say, about some of the terrible things our fellow Jews do, and I have, which is not the best thing to do. I understand that. But when we want to reach out, I'll give you one very, very, very practical example. And I gave this example last year in a different shiur, and I myself have done this once. And that is, we're coming up, believe it or not, soon, just over 4 weeks away, we're coming up to Purim. It's easy to send mishloach manot ish l're'ehu. You send mishloach manot to your friends. Everyone does that. 99.999% of the people to whom you send mishloach manot, either your friends, your neighbors, acquaintances, people you work with. This year, think about somebody who you're a bit on the outs with a little bit. You don't talk to each other. You're not enemies, which is even more problematic, but someone you haven't talked to for a while because they bug you or you don't like this or they don't like you about something. Send mishloach manot. That's a gigantic step in Ben Adam L'Chavero. Every day that we desire Hashem's return, for his Shekhinah, Hashem didn't go anywhere, but the intensity of Shekhinah, we want to see that happen. And we do that with our brachot, a bracha of V'li Yerushalayim Yercha Barachamim Tashuv. And how do we become that force? We galvanize, I guess would be a good word, our spiritual potential, as I just said. We yearn, we desire a stronger connection to Hashem. When we possess a vision, the vision is not just seeing a building in Yerushalayim that has a beautiful structure like it was in the time of the destruction of Beit HaMikdash, but we can see a vision of our people with the Beit HaMikdash, with Kohen Gadol, with the Shekhinah's presence, with whatever else it means. When we can actually start to see that and feel that, then we bring that day closer. So when we start, that's why I'm saying this is a really nice idea or entree into this particular bracha, because we start to have a little bit of inkling. What is it? It's nice. I'm going to go through the bracha, and we'll talk about these anomalies and why is the vav and why do we say b'mheira b'yameinu. We're going to go through that, but in the bigger picture, why do we even have the bracha? And that's important to understand. I'm going to read something to you I don't remember where I quoted this from. I have it in quotes, but I don't know where it's from. You have come closer to accomplishing the ultimate goal than at any other time during the past 2,000 years. Never before have I brought you so close to that place that has drawn the Jewish heart for centuries. Yet so many Jews are so distant from this holy place that they do not care if the Beit HaMikdash is finally belongs to them, and they have no concept of the precious Jewish way of life that Torah holds for them. What are you doing to help them discover the wonderful forgotten heritage that is rightfully theirs? So our challenge is expanding of Yerushalayim so that Yerushalayim and its rebuilt Beit HaMikdash becomes a reality for everybody, the spiritual center for Am Yisrael. So when we, Bezrat Hashem, get going with the bracha starting next week, I want you to keep in mind the importance of what it is when we daven for Yerushalayim. You don't have to wait till next week to have understanding of that, but take a minute, take a half a minute, look at the words of what it is you're saying, pause for a second, and think. If you, God forbid, know someone who's sick, and you stop for a second in Rifa'in or in Shema Kolei, you stop for a second, and you think about that person, you say their name. You can make it a habit in the Bracha Yerushalayim to stop for a second. Same thing, because that's a huge illness that's out there in quotes, and that is a lack of spirituality and a lack of growth and lack of Beit HaMikdash and lack of Shekhinah. One of the things we will have Bezrat Hashem on Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av this year, is before the barbecue. We're all Bisari, who eats Bisari. We have every year waiting for us in the wings, Aryeh Bezrat Hashem with his lasagna, and we will wait for that. You don't want to have a lasagna this year. I'm looking forward to it every single year, Aryeh. So Bezrat Hashem, right? I think that it's going to be a wonderful day. We'll start with the morning with the lasagna, and we'll go to the barbecue in the afternoon. Yes. I
haven't done anything. I'm sitting here listening.
I know, but I like what you do. It's such a wonderful idea to have a lasagna ready for Tisha B'Av. I think it's fantastic. It's great.
Rabbi, give me a bracha. I will be healthy enough on that day.
You should be healthy enough to be able to make
it, to serve it, to bring everybody. None of us have to fast on that day.
That you're not going to have to fast on that day anyways this year. You don't have to worry about the health. Baruch Hashem. You're not going to have to worry about it this year at all. Nobody is. I'm already telling everybody there's no fasting this year on Tisha B'Av. Got it? We're all done with that. It's over. And we have to do the right thing.
Bezrat Hashem.
Bezrat Hashem. Bezrat Hashem. All right, that's your introduction to the next bracha. Bezrat Hashem will pick it up next week. And everyone have a Shavuot Tov.
Thank you very much.
Rabbi. Shavuot Tov.
Great shiur. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.